Joining us right now, former Speaker of the House, 2012 presidential candidate, CNN analyst Newt Gingrich. Speaker Gingrich, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be with you and on this slightly chilly day.
Yeah, it's a little chilly.
It is. And, you know, on days like this, and after hearing the president's, in my opinion, tepid and in some ways confusing remarks yesterday in response to the horrific terror attacks against freedom in Paris, I wish that we had a forthright leader like you in the White House who can actually speak coherently about these things. So I'm glad you're here. Could you do us that favor? Could you speak coherently and tell us exactly what America's response should be to what we saw yesterday?
Sure. This is just one more reminder that in the years since 9/11, we have refused to come to grips with reality. There is a worldwide radical Islamist movement. Some of it is in the United States. It's clearly in Europe. It runs from Boko Haram in Nigeria, which in November killed more people than Ebola, across to Somalia, up into ISIS. But it's a worldwide movement. And our leadership, candidly, to some degree in both parties, certainly in the State Department and in the intelligence community, simply refuses to tell the truth about what's going on. This is a religiously inspired, deeply committed, worldwide effort connected by the Internet, and we're going to see more and more attacks. Look at the direct attempt to eliminate free speech. And it's sad that the President of the United States can't tell the truth, can't confront reality. I mean, he can't tell the truth to himself. He's not lying to us. He can't tell himself what's going on because it goes so much against his beliefs.
Right.
And I think it's a real problem for the entire Western world.
But what's behind his reluctance to come and say things like you just said?
Well, I think our elites have decided that that's probably proof that I'm Islamophobic, and you're not allowed to tell these things because, after all, you have to pretend that this has nothing to do with religion, which is baloney. And I'm not talking about the average Muslim, but there is no question that the people who have been killing not just Westerners. Remember, the number one target of these groups are Muslims, and ISIS has killed vastly more Muslims than anybody else. Boko Haram kills indiscriminately, and yet nobody has got the courage to stand up and say, we're going to have a worldwide campaign that is aimed at wiping out this religious fanaticism. And that's going to be a very difficult, very painful campaign. And the question is how long we have to remain on defense and remain confused and have people get killed before we, in fact, methodically react to it.
Speaker Gingrich, a year from this week, we will have the Iowa caucuses for the 2016 Republican and Democratic candidates for president. And I wonder, since you went through that process last time around, we're seeing moves from a couple of prominent names. Governor Huckabee has disbanded his television show with the idea that he's looking at it. And Jeb Bush, you look at the moves he's making, I think he's all but in. When you ran, you had some success, especially in South Carolina and beyond, running as sort of an anti-Washington establishment kind of candidate. What do you think of Jeb Bush emerging here, and do you think that he's too tied to the establishment?
Well, I think Jeb is a very talented guy. He was a very good governor of Florida, but he's going to have a message and a rationale for his campaign more than that it's his turn. And so far, he sort of said, I'm going to wander around the country and listen to people and eventually figure out a message. Well, that's not a very compelling explanation of leadership. He's going to have some very good competitors. As you mentioned, Governor Mike Huckabee is one of them. You look at Governor John Kasich or Governor Scott Walker.
And Rick Perry, by the way, is heading to New Hampshire now.
Yeah, I was going to say Governor Rick Perry, who I'll be with tomorrow in Austin. We're doing an event together for the Texas Policy Foundation. These are all very talented people. And then you've got a couple of U.S. senators, Rand Paul, who clearly will be very formidable and who's been making some very intelligent moves in his own right. You may well get Ted Cruz, and you could get Marco Rubio. This may be the deepest field the Republican Party has seen since 1940. There will be at least 8 or 10 people who could be very good presidential candidates and very good presidents, which is the important thing. I always tell people, start with who do you want in the Oval Office, and then come back to how do we elect them. Don't start with just who's the best candidate in the short run.
All right, so look, I want to paraphrase Will Rogers, who once said he wasn't a member of any Republican party, any organized party. He was a Democrat. I think the same thing could be said of Republicans these days. They don't look very organized up on Capitol Hill right now, especially in the House of Representatives, where there's been sort of an inter-family squabble. The Speaker Boehner says there needs to be a family conversation to bring everybody together. As you look at the challenge against Boehner, do you think it was a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's partly a function of news media myopia. Percentage-wise, Harry Reid had more Democrats vote against him in the Senate than Republicans who voted against Boehner. Yet somehow we don't have disunity among the Democrats. But it's literally a fact that a bigger percentage of Democrats voted against Harry Reid than voted against John Boehner.
That's a great point.
Second, John Boehner worked hard all year long, led the effort, and it now presides over the largest number of Republicans since 1928. Now, that's a pretty substantial achievement, and he's in a position, I think, to do some smart things. Let me give you a minor example.
Okay.
The Hiring Heroes legislation passed 412 to 0, so it's totally bipartisan, gets no press coverage because it passes 412 to 0. Here's a bill which begins to modify Obamacare by saying if a small business hires a veteran, they do not count against the cap of 50 to make the small business fit under the Obamacare rules. So it begins to create an exemption. They've already passed it. It's a step in the right direction. They're holding hearings on a bipartisan bill on the Keystone Pipeline. They're going to have they're going to have bipartisan legislation on repealing the tax on medical devices, another step towards gradually repealing Obamacare. They very intelligently in December separated out the Department of Homeland Security, so they're going to have a big fight in February over the president's, in my judgment, illegal act on changing the law by his own personal decision. So you're going to see a very calm, steady, methodical move in the House and the Senate, with both Boehner and McConnell committed to actually passing positive legislation. Now,
can I just ask you, though, when 60% of Republicans in a survey said that they wanted to see somebody else as Speaker of the House, what do you read into that?
That 60% of the Republicans are dissatisfied with Washington in general, and Boehner is the name they attach that to. And I don't blame them. Look, I'm dissatisfied with Washington. I think any rational person has to be fairly dissatisfied with Washington. When you learn that the IRS last year gave away $15 billion to the wrong people, if you're not dissatisfied, you're a little nuts. When you look at how bad the Veterans Administration is, if you're not a little dissatisfied, you're out of touch with reality. So it's not hard to be dissatisfied with Washington. But among the people who hire him, who are called representatives, he got 89% of the vote. And the guy who came closest, Boehner got 18 votes for every vote the next person got. Now, normally in my career, if I could beat my competitor by 18 to 1, I felt okay.
All right, fair enough.
All right, we got to leave it there. Speaker Gingrich, always good to have you, sir. And thanks for joining us today. And by the way, if you want to see more of Speaker Gingrich and his perspective on this war on terror, I implore you to go check out his film, America at Risk, The War with No Name. It's a documentary he made a few years ago, and you can get it at gingrichproductions.com. And it's exactly the kind of clarion voice that we need right now against this threat we have.